In a world within our world, they've created a world unlike any other world.
Dungeons and Dragons. And a game like D&D fuels their imagination and makes them feel special.
The ogre is amused by your joke and allows you to pass.
Dad, I'm just curious. What is it about Dungeons and Dragons that suddenly leapt out at you at age 60?
Dungeons, it'd be the dungeons.
Just what I love about role-playing games is being told exactly what to do.
Me too. You should introduce yourselves.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to Guelph Community Radio 93.3 FM. My name is Mike the Birdman, and this is The Spellbook. This is the show that is dedicated to the tabletop role-playing game hobby, whether you're braving the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons through the mists of Ravenloft, or perhaps you're going to someplace more savage like Dark Sun, or maybe the far-flung future of Shadowrun. We cover it all and so much more. But I'm not alone as we talk about what to do about blank. I'm joined by my compatriot from the lovely Forest City of London, Ontario, Canada.
Hi there. It is Damien, also known as Magical Hack. I've been fighting bears here in the Forest City who claim the right to bear arms.
You see, it's always the bears. That's why you
Always
pay the
the-
bear tax.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes,
The geese haven't been doing their job this year.
Yeah, those stupid Cobra chickens. So yes, guys, once again, we have to thank Guelph Community Radio 93.3 for hosting us, and also thisweekingeek.net, where you can download the episodes later on if you want to go back through our pretty extensive archive. We're over 20 plus episodes now.
Yeah.
Apologies for no episode last week. Honestly, it just came down to me being exhausted. I was actually teaching a podcast camp up at the university, which was very successful this year. I had my group, a lot of kids I knew from previous times. We did their suggestion, and they requested me specifically. They wanted to talk about cryptids. So we talked about the Loveland Frogman. We actually had my friend Enrique Couto from Weekly Spookies as one of our contributing guests to that, which was really fun. And I also learned about Mothman and all that stuff. These kids were really on the ball. Honestly, it was wicked. We kind of referred to ourselves as the X-Men during the week. And when we gave the presentation to the parents, it was kind of a nerdy thing. I was like, to me, my X-Men. And those kids were just, it was so hype. So yeah, that was a really good time. So we are back this week. And hopefully we're going to give you an interesting discussion today, because this was a topic me and Damien have been wanting to talk about for a while. We've talked about cooperation at the table. We've talked about how to bring people together, how to have a really, really good time. However, there is a dark side to the hobby, though we're not talking about the Satanic Panic, although that is planned for later on this year. We're going to do a deep dive into that and kind of talk about the origins of that. Maybe we'll find an expert to come on the show with us. But we're going to talk today about problem players. Now, that's not necessarily the one guy who decides to be the murder hobo, although it very well could be. Problem players is something that can happen when you start playing with strangers, but even your friends. Sometimes, vibes don't vibe. Mistakes happen. People don't take the game either as seriously, or in some cases too seriously. There's no two tables trouble is going to look the exact same, but there are going to be some universal pieces of advice that you can probably follow here. But there's a number of different channels on YouTube, which we'll definitely send a couple of shout outs later on in the show, that cover this. There are threads on Reddit. There are threads on Threads. There are all sorts of places you can hear about RPG horror stories. But we're mostly talking about problem players today. So I guess, Damien, you and I have been game mastering for about 20 years plus each, multiple game systems.
Yeah.
In your experience, how would you define a problem player to you?
So the way I look at a problem player is very simply, is they are somebody who disrupts the game for one or more other players. It could be And this could be somebody who is on either side of the GM screen, because the GM is also a player. So like your GMs that kind of get power hungry and take the whole "I am the god of this world" as, you know, written law type deal. Or it could be the player at the table that decides that they're going to
Be the main character this week.
be the main, or just be the main character in general. Because like, I don't know, I'm of the opinion that everybody at the table should get at least one session where they are the main character. That's just me. But like,
Yep.
it's more along the lines of the person who always wants the spotlight.
Yeah.
You know, the person who thinks every session is the Bob show.
Yeah. I would probably be inclined to agree. For me, I would probably base a lot of my definitions very similar along yours. It's anybody who disrupts the table and isn't willing to cooperate with the unspoken social contract of what you're doing. Because when you think about it, playing these games that we all love to play, be it D&D, Pathfinder, Battletech, whatever, we're all agreeing to have a good time. We're all agreeing to be vulnerable, agreeing to pretend, and agreeing to let's spend a little bit of time in whatever fictional fantasy world we are and talk in funny voices, whatever. Problem players are people that, through intentional action or not, disrupt that sense of disconnecting from the real world for a couple of hours. Now, this can also take the form, as Damien mentioned, in the form of a vindictive or power-hungry GM. That does happen. You can also see this in people who are power players, people who min-max their stats by watching hours of YouTube and literally have their math dialed into infinite combos. Or they could be the person who decides they want to play an overly offensive stereotype of, you know, anything, either a nationality, sexuality, or whatever. These are the people that can cause problems at our table. Now, are there ways to work with them? Absolutely. And not every horror story has to end with someone leaving the table. And I think that's one thing we want to talk about today. It's working with these players for de-escalation, or finding a way to build in cooperation, because maybe they just don't understand the game that you're trying to play. And I'm going to think of one example, and this is an example where I was the problem player. And this was actually recorded, though I don't know whether this exists anymore. So once upon a time, I used to run a podcast. We were actually one of the first actual plays. I think we predated Critical Role by a couple of years. And we used to have a show called Terrible Warriors. And one of our game masters, Justin, had started to run the game Paranoia. And I had the complete wrong impression of what that game was. I thought it was going to be very X-Files, very Cloak and Dagger. I thought the name Conspiracy would, you know, bring up images of the cigarette smoking man and, you know, all this other, you know, spy stuff. And what I got was this goofy parody comedy RPG where I was not having fun. And I looked at one of my other players. I think it was my friend. I want to say it was my friend Erica. It might have been Bree. I can't remember who. I know it was definitely a woman. And we said, like, hey, I'm not having fun. Do you want to just cause chaos? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, well, let's see what he does. And I'll admit, that was about the most unprofessional thing I've done, but it worked well in game. But I was a disruptive player because I didn't communicate what I was looking for, or maybe I had the wrong intentions. And there is the big clue right there. Miscommunication is what caused this thing. Because again, as I've spoken about the social contract, when you all sit down to play, this is why session 0 is so important. You have to lay out tone, expectations. Now, when you play with your friends or people you play with for a while, you typically don't always need the session 0 because you kind of know what everyone's going to jive with. Kind of like our group that we play on Sundays. Everybody kind of knows what to expect from me. We know what is and isn't going to fly most times.
Until I come out with something really weird.
Yeah, exactly. But you've never been disruptive for the sake of being disruptive.
No. I just, come up with weird ideas.
Yeah.
Like the one I posted in the Discord the other day. Or yesterday.
And you solved a pretty big problem with an item that I gave you that I forgot that I gave you, which could have very easily spiraled. These guys had fought a fairy version of Freddy Krueger. I forgot I gave them a powder of sneezing because I thought it just sounded cool. What Mike didn't realize, read the flavor text. And Freddy sneezed himself to death with his first health bar.
Oh, that was great. Like,
yeah.
Like going into that, I'm like, okay, I got this. Oh, 30 feet, eh? Well, this may suck for some of the people, but
yeah, like it like honestly kind of worked out too, because that's one of those moments where I would say a lesser experienced game master might have taken that personally, because you have this big dramatic moment, you have this villain you've kind of built up over the course of 6 to 8 sessions, and they get taken out by a Looney Tunes thing. Now, obviously, on one hand, that's funny. That's why we play these games. We want memories. Not everything is going to be the epic shot of Frodo throwing the ring into Mount Doom or Neo dodging bullets. Sometimes it is jumping over a fence and you fall, like in Hot Fuzz, or you fight a guy who can only say yarp. Sometimes dumb crap happens and you have to roll with it. And yeah, like that can make certain game masters, even players, vengeful, because that can take away their cool moment. But you have to understand we're all here to have fun, and goofy moments are going to happen, and that's sort of why we play these things. We play these things to make memories, but there are some times, and I'm probably going to go into this a little bit more after the break, in just a couple minutes here, where I experienced a pretty significant portion where someone took the game maybe a little too seriously.
Huh?
What about some of the other experiences you've had during your time as a game master or player?
So I actually have two. I'll go with the most recent one. It was when I was as a player. I was playing in an in-person game. This is years ago now, and we were at a guy's house, and unfortunately, he drank while he played. Which, okay, honestly, in my opinion, if you can handle yourself, I have no issue with this. However, it actually got to the point where, like, because we were talking before an encounter about using a specific item that was going to help us, kind of similar to the dust of sneezing and choking idea. It was it was a Horn of Valhalla, actually, the item in question. I'm like, okay, if you blow on this, talking to the problem player in question, like, it'll help us. You have this item, you're attuned to it. This would be perfect. Everything starts happening. I'm like, and then I just offhandedly, hey, would you like to do that thing that we were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Guy picks up his character sheet, basically throws it at me. He's like, if you want to play my character, fine. Like, he had a few drinks, and at this point, I'm like, and like, he stood up and started screaming at me.
Oh,
The unfortunate thing is it was his house. So I looked at the GM, I looked at the other people, including my ride. I'm like, nah, I'm out of here. I'm gonna walk home. It took the GM and the rest of the players to be like, no, just go outside and cool down. We'll deal with this. But yeah, like, when you're gonna have an outburst like that over a suggestion, especially something that was talked about, like, if you don't want to do it, simply say no, and then okay, we go with plan B then.
Yeah, exactly. Like, communication is so important.
Yeah, it's those outbursts and those, like, I think those kind of situations are some of the most overt ways that you can see that you may have a problem player at your table.
Yeah, exactly. It's just substances, and if you can handle yourself, great, but sometimes they do cause problems. So we're going to take a small break here on Guelph Community Radio 93.3 CFRU. My name is Mike. That is Damien. This is the Spellbook. And when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about some of the horror story strategies and other things you can do at your table to address problem players. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Blender Spellbook, and I listen to CFRU to hear a mix of local content that I'm not going to hear anywhere else. I'm CFRU. Are you?
Welcome back to the Spellbook right here on 93.3 CFRU, Guelph Community Radio, as we're talking about problem players. Now, Mike, you said you'd had something that you wanted to talk about after the break.
Yeah,
Perfect time.
this is probably the most dramatic I've ever seen a group come under fire. And this happened in my personal group between me and some friends. So some names will have definitely been changed to protect the innocent here, or whatever. Let's call them Jim and Frank. So one of our players, Jim, had come in with some other people, and it was them having a good time, and we're all talking, and I take my character fairly seriously. We're playing a mercenary unit, we're playing a military style game. And our game master, my friend Peter, was like, okay, I'm going to treat you guys seriously. You are a paramilitary unit. I don't expect you to know everything, but I expect you to play smart. So if you are outnumbered, there is no shame in retreating. You live to fight another day. Intelligence is worth its weight in gold, even if you don't get to deliver a killing blow. So, okay. So we are going to this goblin encampment or something, and we're kind of figuring, okay, let's scout the area. We have to go into this camp. We have to rescue some people, but we don't have the intelligence to go in there. We can't rush in or we're going to get our asses kicked. So one of our players decides to cowboy up. And what does cowboy up mean? The cowboy up means they split the party. Now, is splitting the party always a bad idea? No, it can work if you have the big P word, a plan. Yeah. This person, Jim, had decided them and their partner, Frank, were going to go fight these goblins on their own. They were going to try to do something ahead of the group. Like, okay, that's not smart. Like, I brought my character, and I'm not going to try to paint myself as some military genius, but I was like, okay, this is not tactically sound. We know they have hobgoblins, but we know they have superior numbers. I'm advising you to please don't do this. We can wait to do this until later when we're in a better position. We can use terrain. We can use weather. Going in there, bowstrings draw taut is not going to help us. And the situation turned on them very south very quickly. And my game master, Peter, is very military minded. I'll just say they have paramilitary experience, and they took them apart at the seams. They dealt them with range combat, softened them up with spells, didn't kill them, took them alive so we could rescue them. He pulled his punches where necessary. It also made sense for them to interrogate a bunch of these, monkeys. Makes sense. Like, where are you? What are your numbers? I'm going to get the info out of you before I do something terrible. Okay, fine. Makes total sense. This player thought the game master was picking on them because of superior tactics. And all of us were like, no, that's not what happened. So I tend to play the role of negotiator. I tend to de-escalate. I mean, even when you and I were friends in Owen Sound, I don't think it would be unfair to say if there was a disagreement in a group, I try to de-escalate it. Because that's typically how I do things. I like people to get along and have fun. So this player, Jim, is having not a great time, we'll say. And I'm chatting with the game master, and the game master's is getting chewed out. And he's like, Mike, I don't know whether I even want to continue playing this game. And I'm thinking, okay, everybody, let's take a breath. Let us talk about this. So I addressed Jim, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? What is your problem? And maybe I shouldn't have said, what is your problem? I think I said something along the lines of what's going on, but I'm not going to excuse my behavior anyway. And he's like, my problem is you. And I'm like, wait, what? I was like, because you told me not to do this, and it's because of you I got jumped. And I could be remembering some details of this wrong, but I got blamed for this pretty hard. And eventually it seemed like our entire group, we'd been together for a couple of months. We were all having a grand time. It looked like we were going to break up. And I'm like, oh my God, please no. This is the longest group I've ever had continuously where I'm a player. I don't want to be a forever DM. I'm very protective of this. Eventually, what was decided is our GM had politely asked this player, say, look, I can see what's going on here. I don't think we're going to be able to reconcile our differences here. So I'm going to say this is maybe not the game for you. No hard feelings. He wrote a really nice letter. We did try to work it out as politely as possible. And unfortunately, there just wasn't a path forward where cooperation was going to work. And it was really shaky there for a couple of weeks. Eventually, me and my friend Nick were able to bring in some other people. And finally, we've had this solid group and we've been together for over 2.5 years now. It's been really, really nice. And it was really sincerely worrying because, like, I'd never seen someone take it so personally. And then our game master, when we went to rescue in game Jim and Frank's characters, he's like, my character needs to suffer from PTSD now. He's been captured and tortured. I want to have a chance to fail my spells. And we're like, man, you don't have to do that. Like maybe if you want to role play the trauma and we can heal you up with like greater restoration or something. Like, we're trying to find ways for them to be able to be back to baseline.
Yeah.
And they weren't having it. And I can really applaud the attention to role play. I really can. But it became pretty clear this person was going through something in their personal life. And they were at the time. And they were using D&D as an outlet, as therapy. And that's a healthy way to do it. But not everybody signs up for that.
It can be a healthy way to do it.
Yeah, and it was so troubling because I genuinely liked hanging out with these two people. I thought it was really fun, and we were afraid we were going to lose my friends Nick and Sam. We thought like the whole group was going to go because these two came over with them. And fortunately, everyone decided like, okay, we don't have to play together, but we all share mutual friends. Mommy and daddy can stop hitting each other. And I don't mean to make light of domestic abuse. It's just the best analogy that I could think of. But it's like, okay, we need to talk this out. And fortunately, it seems like they have gone on to other games and they're still having fun. I haven't spoken to them in a number of years, but I wish them well. And that genuinely shook me to my core because I'd never thought I would be living an RPG horror story. Like, it's something I didn't know how to handle. And I was so shocked, Damien, that my de-escalation tactics didn't work.
And that's the thing. Like, sometimes they don't. And like, that's where you kind of have to pivot. And, as you said, you kind of have to then write up that exit letter and be like, I'm sorry, like this isn't gonna work with us. It's it's not you, it's me type deal. Or well, no, and in a lot of cases when it gets to that point, it's 100% it's not me, it's you. But you don't want to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you don't want to be rude to people, but you also you learn a lot about people. And honestly, like this is something I practice in my communications role. I work with several different organizations, and I actually use D&D as a team building exercise. And it's something you can really start to see how dynamics come out in a group. You start to identify, we did mention this previously, people who want to be the main character. And I'll give this example. I was doing an exercise with a group very recently, and I had said, you come across a group of goblins that are looting. And they're like, okay, awesome. I'm going to beat them up and I'm going to kill them. And I'm thinking, okay, you can do that. You can totally solve this problem with a sword. But might you consider you are clearly you have superior strength, you have superior numbers. Why don't you try talking with them and see what information you can get out of them? And they're like, okay, that makes sense. And eventually my players worked it through and they're like, we never thought about that. I'm like, yeah, because the entire point of today is, can you solve problems without using violence? And they still had fun. They got to use their spells. There was like a talking church mouse, and they had a fantastic time. I also got the idea from like the Ultima games, and I think it's Sherry the church mouse or something. And I'm like, I think that might be kind of fun to use. But that was something that these guys learned from, was that. And one of the players was clearly starting to get main character syndrome because he knew D&D. He's talking about spell combos. He's talking about creating disadvantage and all this, that, and the other thing. And some of my other players who are very brand new, who'd only played 1 or 2 games or only watched stuff like Dimension 20 or Critical Role, were not getting a chance to participate. So I'm thinking, I got to figure a way to get these guys involved because each character had a different skill set. And it's like, okay, we need to not, I don't want someone's first experience of the hobby to be sitting there doing nothing for 30 minutes at a time while someone rattles off an infinite combo or something.
And that honestly is a beautiful way to kind of deal with that version of the problem player who has main character syndrome. Is, okay, cool, you've done the cool thing. That's awesome. Hey, there's this challenge that your, Ultimate Smite Pally build can't deal with. Oh, hey, look, there's this new player over here that they built, Bobby the Ranger, who's an expert at tracking. Let's shift the camera to them and, put the focus on this thing that's in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, because like one thing that you can really do is you want to bring people along with you for the ride. And I love the advice you gave where let other people be the spotlight. Like, because when you shift the camera around, like when you look at Star Wars, for example, it's not entirely the Luke Skywalker story. It's Han Solo, it's Chewbacca, it's Princess Leia, it's even R2 and 3PO. It's not just the guy with the lightsaber that can, kick everyone's ass. And having the opportunity for those players to come forward really can help. I mean, hell, if you look at Star Wars again, Han Solo is a bad player. You know why? Because he shot Greedo, thus drawing undue attention to themselves. That could have brought the Empire down. That could have brought Jabba's goons down on them. And Tatooine could not have happened had the powers that be decided, you know what, Jabba's goons don't like that very much. They're going to send a swoop gang to kill you now. Like, Han Solo, could he have solved that problem better? Maybe.
Now, to be fair, that might have made for a slightly more interesting movie.
That's true. Like there are multiple ways to solve a situation, but sometimes the disruptive player doesn't necessarily mean to do it because they don't understand. I think once Obi-Wan and Luke had talked to Han, they're like, okay, we got to keep a low profile. We don't want the Empire we don't need a Star Destroyer hanging out in orbit to kick our butts as we need to go to like Alderaan. So there's a way out of this without, piling up a literal mountain of dead like stormtroopers. So it's like a lot of problem players can be talked with, but sometimes that isn't always possible. I mean, when we come back from break, there were problem players and DMs you and I both dealt with when we both lived together in Owen Sound. And I'm just going to set the tone for this for when we come back with break. And it's when the game doesn't end, when it simply continues into the real world and you're getting phone calls at 3:00 in the afternoon. And while that's fun and all, sometimes vampires need to sleep. So we will talk about the worlds of darkness and more, problem players, problem, dungeon master, storytellers, and so much more. This is 93.3. My name is Mike. That is Damien. This is the Spellbook. And we will be right back right here on Guelph's Community Radio. 250 watts of amazing power that may or may not summon Cthulhu. You don't know. We'll be back, guys, right after this.
Hi, I'm Otis, and you are listening to CFRU 93.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Spellbook right here on 93.3 CFRU, Guelph Community Radio.
So, before the break, I was alluding to a problem player and DM that you and I had both experienced, where again, names have been changed to protect the silly in this instance. And let's call this person no, that's way too close. That would be their actual name. Let's call them Mikey. So this storyteller Mikey was married to our friend May. So Mikey and May were this married couple, and we would play Vampire the Masquerade. We would LARP, which is a different set of problem players, but that's probably LARP is probably a topic for a different day, we'll say. So Mikey and May, as a married couple at that time, complicated, we'll say. And our friend Mikey loved World of Darkness. This person could tell you who was the seneschal of New Orleans in the 1800s. They knew all the princes, all the tribes, all the disciplines. They knew the World of Darkness to a National Geographic level of obsession, which is great. You want a storyteller who's knowledgeable. Then they start to weaponize it against you. And the game never stops. And this was a chance where the DM, or the storyteller in this instance, abused the power of their office. And what do I mean by that? Well, I was closer to our friend May than Mikey. Though I would have conversations with Mikey, they were always surface level and almost always about game. So fine, whatever. But this person would take it to an obsessive level where certain people in the clique, I always felt, got more favorable attention. They would get more powers, disciplines, younger generation. They would get all advantages and very little. Whereas people like myself, who was a new player, and another guy we played with, who I'm not the biggest fan of, we'll say, let's call him, I don't know, Numpty, because I can't think of anything else. Because I know I can't say that. That could get me in trouble with the CRTC. Let's call him Nicky. Not the same Nicky. So Nicky, he got pretty abused by this person a lot. And it got so stupid where when you would game master the game, it felt fair. It never felt overpowered. I wouldn't, like, my characters were always super weak because I was super new and I hadn't earned that yet. So again, fine with it. That's just how it ran down. But when Mikey ran the games, I always felt like they were wildly unbalanced. And there was never a chance to address it, because if we ever did bring it up as a problem, it was always just like, oh, we'll fix it. And it was never resolved.
Yeah. He was an interesting sort, and that's actually kind of one of those situations where it's somebody that is using the game to kind of avoid their real life problems, which that's a huge, like, red flag and problem right there. Like, if you have somebody like that at their table who is getting to that point, and getting to just kind of step back for a second to speak about the game in question, the thing that didn't help with that is it was considered 24/7.
Yeah.
Which, especially when you're dealing with obsessives, you don't want to have that.
Yeah, no. Because, like, it was so hard for us to have just a normal conversation about just stuff that wasn't dressing in a trench coat with dual katanas on our backs, right? It was weird. Like, I can't recall many conversations involving Mikey that didn't devolve into talking about lore or rules decisions. Whereas you and I, we would sit up and have philosophical conversations. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we talk about game and other stuff too, and like other fun nerd stuff. But with Mikey, that's all that was. And that's a problem too, because like games, they should be fun. They should be a form of escape, but they should not be something to avoid responsibility. And that's one of those things where I'm not saying you need to have a gaming intervention and involve, I don't know, the dorky version of Dr. Phil or something. But, that's one of those times where you literally have to say, hey, man, we got to talk about this. And it's hopefully your person will listen to you and be like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I can dial things back a bit. I still want to have fun, but maybe I'm taking this a little too far, because obsession's a thing too. Because like I said, people get very attached to their characters, and people can feel like it's an attack on them if their character dies. Like, for example, Jim, he felt very attached to his character, and I can see that. I really can. But at the same time, these are characters of our imagination. They're not avatars of ourselves that, I don't know. I'm not going to say they don't matter, because they do. Like, I'm very attached to my one character in our game, Fox Singer. I'd be very sad if they died, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. It is a game. And if you're not risking stuff and you have the possibility of losing, then you're not really learning anything. The story doesn't evolve because there's no stakes.
Yeah.
And when you look at problem players, it's having to have that understanding at the table that everybody's here to have fun. Everyone is here to create a story, an adventure, and everybody wants to walk away happy. And one of the things I struggle with, I really do, is I want to be the best game master that I can be. And I love to have everybody feel great. And we've talked about real life getting in the way. And this is where maybe I could identify myself as a problem DM, because I have health issues. And sometimes I have to cancel last minute for whatever reason. And I can understand how much that sucks, as people have their lives changed around playing these games. And again, that comes down to communication, because that can be a problem too. But that's a problem that usually can be solved if everybody says, like, okay, we can't play Tuesdays at 7:00. What day works for you? Or is it easier for us to come to your house? Do you want to go to the library, or do you want to meet online? Right.
Yeah.
And I feel that's a solution. What are some of the problems you've happened to come across in your career?
So I have seen, as far as like issues that problem players have brought to the table, I've seen people try and play other people's characters. There was there was one situation where I was a GM, and I kind of kick myself for not stepping in, because I should have, but I was less experienced than I am today, and I was a little bit less um bold,
Mellow. Okay. Okay.
I guess. Well, essentially, yeah, I was being too mellow with it, really.
Okay.
Um, it was a situation where there was like one fairly new player at the table, and we were playing 3.5.
Okay.
So it's fairly crunchy. There's a lot of like different like min max power combos you could do, and the one of the players was playing a rogue, and it was like their first character. They were just getting into the hobby. Another one of the players is like holding up signs, basically trying to, mock them into doing the thing that they were suggesting, type deal. Like, oh, you need to do this. This is what you have to do. And I, as the GM, should have stepped in and went, no, stop. That's their character. They can play it how they want.
Mhm.
But I didn't. And that's kind of the one of the big things with problem players and dealing with problem players, uh, is you have to be able to, as the GM, or even as a player, if the person in question is the GM, be able to step back and go, hold on, we need to talk about this. Maybe not
Mhm.
during play, maybe after the fact. And like, especially if it's somebody who responds poorly to being publicly called out, there needs to be that communication, as you say, because like, if a problem player is left to continuously do their thing and do whatever it is that is making them become a problem player. Now,
Mhm.
to kind of mention something that you had spoken about. I don't think health issues make somebody a problem player. That's not something that's within your control a lot of the time.
Mhm.
So, like, if I got into an accident on my way home like if I went out this Sunday and got into an accident on my way home and couldn't play, that wouldn't necessarily make me a problem player.
No.
It's me having a bad day,
Yeah.
100%. It sucks, but like that, I think is just that kind of falls into the scope of life happening. It sucks, but you kind of just have to roll with those punches.
Mhm.
The But as I don't know, as mentioned before, the person who's going to disrupt another player's enjoyment or try and steal the spotlight every session, those are kind of the big time issues that, from what I've seen checking out things like D&D Doge, RPG horror stories, or any of the content creators on YouTube that go to r/D&D horror stories and similar subreddits. It's a lot of times those stories end up being, hey, this player starts doing this thing and it's allowed to continue.
Mhm.
Especially the longer ones. I'm not sure if you've noticed that, Mike, but that's one of the things that I've noticed when like watching a lot of those and listening to the stories. It's like, yeah, this player starts to do something in this session, and then the RPG horror story ends like 5 sessions later, where the group dissolves or there's a big crash out or something like that.
Mhm.
And it's those cases especially where after the first couple of things happen, and I get it, people are avoidant, and conflict avoidant people are everywhere. It happens. But the GM has to be able to step in and be like, look, this is disrupting everything. This is
Yeah,
disrupting everybody.
because I think one underappreciated skill that this is just my opinion, that I think a good storyteller or a good dungeon master picks up very quickly if they manage tables over 3+. You learn to read body language. You very much learn people's micro tells. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, you're like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, but you have to learn to watch for subtle details, because if someone is making another person uncomfortable or they're not having fun, you need to have a conversation. And you can like all right, hey guys, we're going to take a snack break or a smoke break. Everybody come back in 10 minutes. And then you can politely bring them aside. And you don't have to say, hey man, you suck. It can be like, hey, I see what you're doing and I think it's funny. But could you maybe dial that back enough so, say, Jimmy can get a chance to play, or maybe Sally's not having such a good time? Could you encourage them? Another thing too is sometimes you get players who backseat DM you, and that's just a problem as well too, because sometimes people genuinely want to help. For example, in our group, I look to you and our other friend, let's call them, I don't know if we have a name for them. Let's call them Jane. I go to you and Jane and say, hey, I need a rules check. You two both know the rules fairly well. I'll make my ruling on what you guys decide is the best available info in that minute. But there are other people who will say, well, actually, and it's always the rules lawyers who will say, well, on page 53, it doesn't say this. And you can grind a game to the halt. You can have this big epic moment where they're facing down Shredder, or maybe they're face to face with like Megatron, and suddenly you're in a rules debate over spell effects, or can you do this and this, that, and everything. And it kills momentum, because that's another problem player too, is the person who disrupts for the sake of disrupting. And it seems like, while they want to play fair and they want to play optimally, you need to let things play out. Like, you don't want to interrupt a movie with like, By the way, just so you know, the Death Star is exactly 8,000 miles across and has a reactor constructed of so-and-so. You don't need that information in the moment. You need to see the Death Star rising over Alderaan. You need to know that it's bad news, but you don't need an explanation of why it's bad news in that moment. So
Yeah, exactly.
that being said, we're going to come back with some final bits of discussion here on the Spellbook. We've been talking about problem players, some of our experiences, some strategies, and a whole lot more. So we will be back, guys, right here on Guelph's Community Radio. This is CFRU 93.3, Guelph Community Radio, broadcasting from the University Center, or as I call it, the Bard's College. We'll be back, guys, right after this, right here on the Spellbook.
Hey, this is Connor Morand, and you're listening to CFRU 93.3 FM in Guelph, also available at cfru.ca.
Everything is gold, but not...
Welcome back to the Spellbook, right here on 93.3 CFRU Guelph Community Radio. I just got back from fighting off a rules lawyer.
Yes. And, you know, rules lawyers can genuinely mean well, but there's also people who will rules exploit. And I will admit I have done this. And I did it because I wanted to win. It did work out in my favor. And my game master was smart enough to be like, okay, could you maybe not do that in the future? I'm like, yeah, sure. And what had happened in my instance, for example, is I was playing a druid. And at my current level, I could turn into a CR1 creature. All right, cool. So, you know, your wolves, your bears, whatever, some pretty cool stuff. And our DM is very flexible. As long as you can explain how you've seen a wild shape, you're allowed to use them. Like, okay, my character spent about a month in the Underdark as part of their druidic experience. Like, okay, and what did you see down there? I saw a deep Roth. Okay, that's basically a drow moo cow that can cast light. Very cool. But the creature I really wanted was something called a roctopus. And a roctopus is exactly what it sounds like. It's a land-based octopus. You might be thinking, okay, well, why the hell would you want to play that? Number one, I can shoot ink in your face. That's awesome. I have a climb speed. I can crawl along walls. I can even hide along the ceiling. Okay, that's pretty cool. But what I really wanted was a 15-foot reach attack with a +5 to hit, so not nothing. And if I hit you with this, you have to make a DC 16 strength or dexterity save to break my grapple. I can also then choke you out.
Yeah.
This is how I beat a frost giant, was by choking them out. And my DM was not pleased with me, but I'm like, rules is written. I should be able to suffocate him. Not if I don't kill him, I will definitely knock him unconscious. He can't breathe. Explain this. He's failed every single strength save. And that's fair, but I pulled something out of my butt that he didn't have a plan for. Is that a problem player behavior? It can be. Because again, you don't want to pull so many unexpected shenanigans on your DM or your storyteller that they are left scrambling in the moment. Now, sometimes that can create some epic, dramatic moments, such as the sneezing powder with Freddy Krueger. Yeah. But that's okay. That is a situation everybody at the table agreed to roll with. I was like, I'm not going to argue with it. I'm not going to nerf it because that would have felt tremendously unfair. And I was like, you know what? We're going to see how this plays out. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see what happens.
Now, to be fair, the dust of sneezing and choking tactic really only worked because you let me use the heroic inspiration that I'd been given. Without that, yeah, it wouldn't have worked so well.
But yeah, it's like a lot of problem players and problem DMs, and honestly, it sounds so silly, but it's so important, is you got to talk to people. Mm-hmm. And you have to find that inner confidence and strength, because hopefully you're not having a confrontation. You want a conversation. Now, many confrontations do start out as conversations, but it's up to you to make sure they don't escalate, or if you can control the level of anger. And not everyone's going to respond to stuff in the same way. I mean, one of the best pieces of advice, genuinely, I do mean this in the best possible way, was D&D Doge. I love that guy. I love his VTuber talking dog thing. I love his cats. I think he's wonderful. And he always gives this piece of advice, and I think it's so good. Sometimes no D&D is better than bad D&D. And the amount of times I think back to that advice, specifically relating to our friend Mikey, is I have not played a proper World of Darkness game since I left Owen Sound, because Mikey had left such a negative experience on me. And that really sucks, because I genuinely love the World of Darkness. I got a friend of mine who's literally going to Gen Con this weekend and is looking for Werewolf Tribe books for me, because I love that. I love that setting. I love that character. Will I ever get a chance to play? I don't know, but I want to. And that is on me. I recognize that I let someone color an experience for me, but sometimes walking away is the best decision you can make, and you can always find a different table.
Yeah. And like that's the thing. Like I've actually heard that a few times where a problem player has either A, turned somebody off of TTRPGs completely, or B, where, like you say, they turn somebody off of a specific game or system. Like it is an issue that I think every GM, especially players to a lesser degree, but also players, but mainly GMs need to develop the tools to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And as we've said multiple times throughout the episode here today, communication is the first part. You need to be able to sit down with that player and be like, "Hey, look, Bob, it's I love your enthusiasm, but you know, gonna have to come to an agreement here. Your actions with, in the fight with Boblin the Goblin, they made some of the other players uncomfortable. Can you potentially dial that back? Is there a way that we can come to a compromise?"
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
But
at the end of the day, sometimes that conversation can't lead to a resolution where everyone stays at the table, and you need to be ready for that.
yeah, because like you want to make sure you're not harshing anybody's buzz, but at the same time, if the person harshing the buzz is ruining it for everybody else, like one of the things, it took me a really long time, and I still kind of struggle with this, is I'm a player too, even though I'm running the adventure. And sometimes I put a lot of pressure on myself, or like I want to make everybody happy, because at my heart, I'm a people pleaser. Maybe that says something about me psychologically. I don't know. But I want everyone to have a good time. And when I see that not happening, I take it personally, not like as like, oh my God, I'm gonna do something terrible to myself, but it's like I feel bad because not everyone's having fun. And I take that as a personal failure. But I also have to recognize this person is responsible for their own mood too.
Mhm.
They are responsible for how they interact with things. And hopefully finding a table is a good experience for you, because there are tons of places you can go. You can go on Reddit looking for game. There are Discords like this. There's services like Start Playing. You see advertised on like Ginny D or Pointy Hat or whatever. And
You also have paid GM services like, Fox's World of Adventure, which is pretty awesome.
thank you. Yeah, you can find me on Patreon. I really do need to update that thing. But yeah, like you can look out, and when you're searching out these paid for DM services as well, you can have a conversation with them, and you can ask, how do you handle problem players? Like, what do we do if there's no energy here? Like one of the things in our group, for example, we have a very open communication policy in our group. Like if someone has to miss something, we always ask, hey, can we do X? Can we do Y? Can we pilot your character? Are you okay with this? A lot of our group, I think, is built very solidly on a foundation of consent and respect.
Yeah.
Which is something I see a lot of groups practice, but not always. There are sometimes people who will take jokes in not a great way. Like I remember I had a friend of mine, Trevor, was running a game, and he forced a change on a player that they didn't like. And it was a silly change. Their character was going to be named Johnny or something. It was some weird name gag I didn't quite get, but everyone else at the table loved, except this one player. And my friend Trevor got punished for it by the group he was working with to be the DM to represent that place. And I felt bad for him because I'm like, that's a problem that could have very easily been dealt with above table on the side if someone doesn't like that again. And that could be just a personality clash, but you as the player have to lay out your expectations, and you as the dungeon master or the storyteller also have to lay out yours. So you're laying out a roadmap for success, and it's recognizing there are going to be bumps in the road. Like for example, in our group, everybody understands you get you pay for 7 to 8 sessions. You may get 6 because 2 of those sessions might be supersized due to somebody's work schedule changing. Someone like one of our guys, let's call him Ryan, is a pretty big theater guy, and he does all these auditions all the time. And sometimes he just can't make a session, but he always lets us know whenever time's what. Or our other friend Jimmy is like, hey, I'm going up to my college this weekend. I'll be a little bit late. Can we start a little bit later? Or I work on Monday. Can we move the time from 5 to 6? And we're always like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. How does that work for everybody else? And everybody chimes in. Like your Dungeons and Dragons group, as a final thought from me, should feel like a team, like a team-based sport. I'm not saying you're going to be as tight as like, a basketball team or a baseball team or a hockey team, but you should be tight enough to say, hey, for example, like, hey, Damien, I'm not going to be around this weekend. Can we play on Friday night instead of Sunday? And we'll coordinate with the rest of our guys and girls and say, hey, does this work for you? And everybody respects each other to say, yeah, I can work with that. Or, hey, I've got a birthday party or something. Yeah. And everyone has that base level. What are some great pieces of final advice you would get in the last 2.5 minutes here?
So when dealing with problem players, and there's a whole bunch of problem player types that we didn't mention today, such as cheaters and things like that.
Oh God, yeah.
All of them need to be taken individually, because like we don't know as a GM what the player's actual reasoning is. We don't know if they're just having a bad day.
Yeah, that's true. So true.
Something's going on in their personal life and it's affecting their actions at the table. And that's why, you need to talk to them, preferably outside of session if possible, and be like, look, what's going on? Is there something we can do to help? Anything like that. Now, when it comes to somebody cheating and, fudging dice rolls, I think it should be they get one warning, and if they do it again, they're out of the group. But that's just my opinion. I'm super harsh on cheating.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and that's the thing is like, you need to take every case in an individual basis.
Yeah, because you have to give it the proper time and attention that it deserves, because there's no 2 situations likely will be the exact same. And at the end of the day, we're all here to have fun. We're all here to make memories. And in the best case scenario, I hope we're making lifelong friends. Like the group that we play with, I love playing with you guys. And it's to the point where it's like, I get paid to have friends. That's a very special feeling, and it's something that I never want to lose, because that's an awful lot of trust people place in you. And if you are seeking a paid DM service or you're creating adventures with your friends, don't let a game of pretend come in the way of a true friendship. Like time and interaction is such a precious commodity. Treat it seriously and do your very best to be a good person at the end of the day. So we got so much more to talk about here on the Spellbook. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about player homework and buy-in. Do you know what the Battle of Tukiad is? Do you know about the Great Matrix Crash of 2060? Or can you recite the tenements of the 7 kingdoms and the Iron Throne? If you can't, Did you do your homework? We'll be talking about all that and more. So for the Spellbook, we have been...
I am Damien.
I am Mike the Birdman saying be excellent to each other, and we'll catch you guys again next time right here on Guelph Community Radio, CFRU 93.3, and thisweekingeek.net.
It's not enough. We have a gallery of villains to look out for, but now we could be infiltrated by a shape changer. I can't even tell if any of you are acting strange because you've been replaced or because this group is full of weirdos.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Spellbook. If you happen to have any comments or suggestions, please send us an email at thespellbookshow@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're hungry for more, you can find Mike at thisweekingeek.net, covering a variety of nerdy topics, and Damien on YouTube at Magical Hack Makes for more TTRPG conversation.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.